So first things first, we will unpack why AI adoption fails even after heavy investments. We are going to talk about what is going to be a clear pathway or a clear adoption framework or an adoption journey that needs to be in position to ensure that enterprise-wise adoption from AI tools perspective is hand-holded and it is governed in the right direction. Third, we will tell you how Adoptify help measure, scale, and actually realize the ROI on the tools that you have already invested. Very categorically, we will keep the complete instance near to Copilot right now. And then if you guys have any questions, anything across, feel free to write it on the chat. So welcome to the webinar. So of course, the topic of the webinar is why employees aren't using the AI tools that you have bought. I think before we even move forward with this particular topic, Chintan, if you can move to the next slide, I would ask everyone to write in the chat where they are in their journey at the moment. That becomes very imperative and very clinical in terms of understanding where you are in your journey. So if you can just go on to the first slide of it, I think that is where I would want people to write in the chat. Have you scaled in AI? Have you, you know, have you, in case if I have to share, Chintan, shall I share the screen? I think. Sure. No problem. Yeah. So everyone, the entire objective of having this activity with all of you is to understand the participants' journey in AI adoption right now. And if you could quickly write it in the chat as soon as Chintan showcases it, I think it will be great for you to write it in the chat. Where are you? It might be whether you are, um, deployed, you have deployed the Copilot, but the usage is low. Some teams use it, but you do not have scaled it yet. You are still seeing the value, but struggling to measure the Copilot usage. Copilot is one of the examples. I'm just taking it as a placeholder. Or you do not have a visibility on the utilization perspective. If you can write it on the chat, I'm again repeating it for everyone to have a very nuanced understanding of it. It can be we have deployed Copilot, but the usage is low. It can be a visibility issue that you do not know whether the teams are actually using it or not, or some teams use it and some team does not. So you might be in a confusion of whether it has to be department wise scaling or it has to be enterprise wide scaling. And we are seeing value, but you are unable to measure it. So there is a lot of ambiguity around the measurement of the ROI. So if you can start writing in the chat, I think I have started getting a lot of messages on the chat. There are four people who have written it. We have been using AI to accelerate software development. Great. Thanks. Okay. We have not yet started. We are still discovering. Then we have someone saying, okay, that's exactly what will come. Great. So I think people have. So what just I mentioned was in this particular slide where I want all of you to write it and maybe chat with us. I think most of the people are not inclined towards only option A, B, C, D. That is the best part, that we were expecting a spread across it. So it's not the problem that people are just facing in a concentrated way that only they are heavily deployed on AI tools, but they are not using it. It is across. So of course, that is what the entire objective was. So then if you can just go on to the first slide of it, I just want to now take back everyone to the first slide, which is where you have already bought the licenses, but you did not really, buy the adoption. So from a fact perspective, it is very clear that 70% of the enterprise Copilot licenses go underutilized in the first 90 days. That's because you don't know the use case of Copilot. You do not know, maybe your people are not trained enough to use Copilot, maybe because you have not selected the right cohort to pilot the Copilot. So there can be multiple use problem statements. These are the top three problem statements when we interact with a lot of organizations for their adoption problems. This is what we have come across. So I just wanted to rate these three problems in the first Venn diagram that you see right now. Only 1 in 3 leaders say that they have the visibility. Again, visibility becomes a little more concerning for the people in terms of not just how they measure the success of the deployment, but it is also about whether the AI readiness or the people readiness across the organization is actually being translated into a value or not. Then you see the third Venn diagram, which says that most productivity gains takes about 6 to 12 months to materialize without a structured adoption plan. This is something that becomes a very, very important aspect. When I have personally spoken to a lot of organizations across different industries, you talk about real estate, you talk about healthcare, you talk about oil and gas, you talk about finance and banking, we have seen the most productivity gains has happened between 6 to 12 months, but there is no structured plan of adoption. Randomly, people are taking the training, they are bringing the change management, they are doing program management, they are enforcing through leaders, but there is no adoption framework. And that's where Adoptify AI has synced everything in one place, where we develop a complete adoption framework with you, be it data readiness, AI readiness, people readiness, or maybe infrastructure readiness. So that's where we come handy. We'll explain it to you how that works. But on a high level, these are the three major problems that we have been able to identify when we speak to a lot of enterprises. If you can, Chintan, slightly go on to the third slide of it. I mean, the first and second is completed. I want to go on to the third slide, where it's not a Copilot problem. On again, I'm repeating it. Copilot is a placeholder here. It's not a tool problem. It's an adoption problem. So we have understood workflow gap. We have understood people do not really know the use case where they can actually fix. I'm just giving a very small example, Chintan. You would agree to this. We had a problem with one of our client who had purchased 5,000 Copilot licenses, and they have a strength of 2,000 sales employees. And they did not even know about the fact that there is a sales Copilot that they were supposed to use. So it is license within license that they are supposed to know about, which they were not educated by maybe whoever they have purchased this particular license from. So that was one of the problems that we saw in last 3 to 4 conversations we had it, where we understood that when you actually make a purchase, it's not just a purchase to show the management about we are doing something about AI. It's more about building with AI, right? So you need to know the use case. You need to know where in the workflow you can automate using AI, so that that can increase and improve your productivity, efficacy, and efficiency. If I talk about scaling failure, we have seen a lot, and this has been a problem in our organization as well. We are about 1,000 people in our organization. Back in 2021, we have seen that there have been isolated group of people working alongside, but there is no shared practices. There are no shared best practices across the domain, which has not really helped as an organization to really scale it up. And that's when we realize that it's very important that when you are doing a pilot or when you are doing any adoption, you have to share the best practices across, and it cannot be isolated. And that's where scale becomes, and processes, system thinking becomes very imperative and important. If I talk about visibility gap, I've already mentioned that visibility gap to management is again going to be very important aspect to understand, proactively take steps to increase and improve the adoption of any tool that you use. And of course, we all know governance is something AI has been questioned a lot about governance in the last 9 to 10 years. And we have seen that in Asia Pacific specifically, governments are taking a lot more complex steps to ensure that governance around AI is being fixed. I'm just talking about India as a region. We have DPDP Act. If I talk about Japan, they have their own act. So some of the things that are not really applicable in one country, it might be applicable in another country. So of course there are governance issues. Government is doing a lot to ensure that and I would say IT infrastructure teams of the companies are also taking steps to ensure that employees are using it in the safe environment, where the data leakage, where integrity on the data is not going to be a bigger problem. So I think these are the four major issues that we try to solve through Adoptify, and that is what I wanted to convey to all of you.